All right, folks, it's a Monday afternoon here in definitely Durham, North Carolina. You know, a lot of things are going on in the world. Folks are still dealing with the pandemic and getting those vaccines. And of course, people are still dealing with the economies of the world. And of course, a lot of other conversations are taking place as well. And I know that a lot of folks are excited that we're in the middle of a World Series. That's right. We have our two teams that will be playing, that being the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. The Braves, some time back, had defeated my Milwaukee Brewers, so I wasn't too happy about that. But I do have friends that are fans of the Braves, and of course, the Braves used to be the farm team. Well, they were the major league team for our team here, the Durham Bulls. The Durham Bulls are actually now under the jurisdiction of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, but there was a time that they were under the jurisdiction of the Braves, and there was also a time that there wasn't much Major League Baseball or Major League Sports in general here in the Carolinas. So a lot of folks, their allegiances are to the Braves and maybe some of the teams up in DC and around that area. So definitely that's some of the things that are going on. And we just had some rain here earlier. I know it's been raining in other parts of the world because I was talking to a gentleman with Bolt TV out of California, and they were having rain as well. I think that this rain that we're getting is supposed to be part of a hurricane system that is out there as well. So I think we're supposed to get rain today, tomorrow, and maybe some in the latter part of the week as well. So that's some of the things that are impacting our weather and everything along those lines. Looking forward to having some amazing conversations. As many of you know, because I've been talking about it, have been really finding some great guests and some amazing people out of Clubhouse. And so, with the Clubhouse app going and with the whole thing going on of meeting new and amazing people, I've been engaged in a lot of conversations in that space. So, a lot of conversations in that space. Definitely looking forward to finding the guests that I've got coming on today, none other than Dennis. And Dennis is actually going to be talking about diversity and inclusion, and he's getting ready to go on a major trip. That's right. He's going to be sailing the ocean sea, the ocean blue, as they like to call it, and everything. So I know that we've had some guests on, including our friend Veronica, who lives over there in Houston, and she is the e-commerce queen. But her and her husband live sometimes on a boat over there in Houston. So I know she's been on a couple of our shows and knows about that boat life as well. And definitely they are, I think, originally from one of the Southern African countries and all of that, but now called Texas home. But definitely it'll be interesting. Maybe they'll be watching and they might have some comments as well. But I'm going to bring in Dennis. I'm glad to see this new friend of mine, Mr. Dennis, on and everything. So Dennis is getting ready to come at us all the way from Sweden and definitely doing some amazing things. So Dennis, glad you could join me. Glad to meet you through the wonders of Clubhouse and all of that. It's a wonderful app. I met some great friends. As a matter of fact, some people that I don't even know that well because I actually on Saturday was on a party that was featuring a legend of music, none other than Bootsy Collins, and he was having his birthday party on Clubhouse, and a lot of major celebrities like Victor Wooten and Lisa and the Cold Jam, as well as Christian McBride and even Paul Schaefer from the Tonight Show were all on that Clubhouse call, and we're definitely sharing their memories of that legend. So that was a great call to be part of. Did get a chance to jump on the stage myself, along with a gentleman that I'm helping in that space, because Zach Roberson is a funk musician himself here, originally from the New York area, but now making a home in this area. But he's doing some great work in that style of music. So I'd heard about it through him and others and attended that party, an online party, for lack of a better term. And it was definitely great meeting some individuals that I did not know, as well as even starting to learn more of them and reach out to them now and everything. But like I said, Dennis, we met off of Clubhouse, and I've really enjoyed some of the people I've met there. Have had some other guests from different rooms in there, and definitely when I was hearing your story, I'm like, this man is going to travel the ocean, and he's going to also be celebrating diversity, which is a truly amazing story and all of that. So I'd love to hear even what got you into this notion of wanting to travel the world. Were you like born an ocean person? Were you like raised in the sea? Because I do know Sweden is a coastal area, or at least has some coastal parts of it and everything. But were you raised around the ocean and just always wanted to be an ocean person? Tell us a little bit about Dennis the person.
Let's answer the first question. And thank you, Mark, so much for having me. This is my first time, so I'm a little bit nervous here. I'm gonna try to compose myself as much as possible. If I'm a seaman in my veins, yes. When I done some relative studies, and we have actually been both pirates and admirals on the sea. So I think the ocean runs in my veins.
Okay.
Well, as you can see, I'm a middle-aged white guy. Nothing special. I'm a blue-collar guy. Works like everyone else, and nothing special at all, if I'm gonna be honest. And yeah, I'm just glad to be here talking to you. It's I've been so nervous. I actually had a few friends of mine trying to interview me before this, so I don't mess up. You don't want to mess up, you know.
Well, I appreciate it. You're doing a good job already and everything. So, I guess the first question is you talked about your family history and your family lineage, and it sounds like you've already got some people in your family that might have been involved in the ocean. And I wouldn't say that anybody is a average person. I think we all have a specialty and all have a gift in and of ourselves and all of that. I think that that's one of the great things about humanity. That's just my own personal opinion. But just tell us a little bit about these family members and whether you grew up around them and what this whole concept of them being admirals and pirates. Because I know as a kid, I was oftentimes fascinated by pirates because pirates oftentimes would come around the Carolinas. And we have some stories of Blackbeard and other pirates that made their way to the Carolinas here and everything. So definitely, I'd love to hear your stories of what you've been hearing about your family history.
Well, I don't remember. It's the 14th or 1500s. Anyway, during the pirate times, we were pirates, Spanish pirates. We sailed a lot between Mallorca and the Caribbean. As most pirates at that time, that was the usual route, even though it's dangerous. But and there's a little blind spot between that, and I think it's like 200 years after that we encountered the first captain in the Spanish Armada.
Okay.
And then we have the Spanish Wars against England, where we actually have an admiral in our family. Not an yeah, it's an admiral. He runs 2 ships. That's his job. So, and well, the later days, more present time, my father was a sailor. My grandfather was a sailor. My grandfather's father was a fisherman, but I call it a sailor anyway. He worked on the ocean, but he actually did something that I'm proud of today. He actually smuggled ewes out of Germany on his fishing boat to Denmark to give them a safe haven. So, yeah, boating life have always been a big part of me. I never sailed the great oceans myself, if I'm gonna be honest. I've just sailed around the coast, you know, being cautious. But I noticed that sometimes you have to stand up for what you think is right, and if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it big. As you say, nobody's average. This is more of a term for me to make people understand that I don't come from a privileged family or something. Because normally when you talk about racism and diversity and all of that, they always say it's you're a privileged person. You can talk about that. So I want to show them that no, you don't have to be privileged. You just, well, I'm white, so obviously I'm privileged from the start, but I'm not privileged in the way they're talking about in that way. So I just want to show them, go out there and get it done.
That makes a lot of sense. Just get it done and everything. I know here in North Carolina and definitely around those coastal towns, a friend of mine had actually done some artwork around this topic and everything. Too many of the youth were not necessarily wanting to get into those traditional fields of fishing or some of those other kind of fields. They would oftentimes run away from the coastal towns because they wanted to hit the big city or definitely didn't want to do necessarily that kind of hard labor because the fishing life, from what I understand, and I've got family members that are in the farming industry, but not necessarily the fishing end of it. But definitely, it is not an easy lifestyle, no matter which part of the world you are in. So I do know that there has been a conversation around the United States around people leaving that industry and the industry even having a hard time maintaining that population and even in some cases those towns even being able to stay alive. So I was just wondering, were y'all having those same kind of issues in Sweden where the young people weren't necessarily wanting to do those traditional jobs, like being a fisherman or like being involved in that entire industry, even the boating industry.
Most definitely. I don't know what the correct word is in English, but everything is moving to the big cities now. It's all about the high tech. It's all about IT, and that's the future. We unfortunately we're gonna have to embrace it. I think soon we're gonna have AI boats that allow catching the exactly right amount of fish that we're allowed to take and all that. So yeah, fishing and farming is really going downwards in Sweden. We used to be almost self-sustained. I think we're down to 30% of self-sustained right now. So yeah, it goes. I don't know if it goes backwards or forward. That's up to history to tell us later, I guess.
Yeah, history will have to determine that for us. I know that the other thing that has come up in conversations, not just here in the States, but around in Europe, definitely around Asia, Africa, and the other continents, is this whole notion of people being concerned about the environmental concerns within fishermen and things of that nature. I know that there have been, things that are going on around the plastic that's in the ocean, around some of the other things that are in the ocean that are destroying our planet. And a lot of times it even comes up when there's conversations around climate change. And I definitely want to get to diversity as well, but I just wanted your thoughts about that, because I have heard definitely the whole notion of some of the Scandinavian countries being mentioned when they talk about whaling and when they talk about some of the environmental concerns that are going on.
Yeah, definitely. We have Norway used to fish whales. They have stopped now. The only country that I know of, I'm not going to be held accountable for this one, but I think it's the Japanese population that still are, but they're calling it research. So I have to believe it's research. It says so on the ship, so it must be that. The problem we are having is the cod fishing actually right now. And the European Parliament just made a rule that we're going to lose, I think, a third of our fishing fleet is being unemployed right now because I don't know what it's called. It's called Easter Lake in Sweden, but if I translate it straight off, but the cod population is really, really down by a lot. So they stopped it. Actually, the quotas are really low. So yeah, I do love the ocean. I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't be doing what I want to do otherwise. But yeah, the ocean is a dear question for me, and environmental questions are extremely hard to answer, if I'm going to be honest. Those are the most complicated systems we have on this earth, to be honest. So I'm not the kind of guy that can answer that. I'm sorry.
No, no, you're doing good and you're doing perfectly well. And like I said, one of the things we love doing is getting people's opinions based on their own lives, their own systems, and what they have going on in their world and everything. That being said, I hope that everything is going well with your family in relationship to this pandemic that we're in the middle of. And how is Sweden as a country doing in that regards? I know a lot of countries have been opening up more, definitely here in the United States. I understand that parts of Australia have definitely opened up, and actually major parts of Australia. And I understand the same with other parts of the world as well, even though there's some that are still under very restrictive rules in terms of both vaccinations and in terms of being out in the public, and they wanting folks to wear masks. But I was just wondering how things are going in Sweden overall, and if you're seeing enough effort to curtail this situation that we're in the middle of with this pandemic.
Well, Sweden, we really never closed down like a lot of other countries. It hit us hit us hard because everyone that has followed the COVID death situations knows that Sweden got hit hard by it. We unfortunately missed on protecting the elderly population. It's a big miss, but now it looks good. We have 80% has gotten the first jab. I think it's 65% gotten double jabs. So yeah, we're totally open right now. So come, have fun, enjoy. We're here for your enjoyment.
Speaking of being there for your enjoyment, Sweden, as well as other parts of that world, have always been on my wish list. I actually had a friend of mine that married a gentleman from want to say he was from Denmark, if I remember correctly, but definitely he was in that Scandinavian area, and she definitely enjoyed it. I want to say that they're back in this area because he was actually a business investor here in this Durham area, and I remember that they were, and I think still are, married and everything. But definitely, it seems like they told me about the rich art community that y'all have there because they were into the arts, as am I, and the rich culture and the things along those lines. But and of course, there's all kinds of other beauties about Sweden and the entire Scandinavian region. But I was just wondering if somebody was to ask Dennis the best parts of being in Sweden and why tourists should come to Sweden, what would it be, and what are some hidden treasures that we may not know? Because it's always good when you talk to people from the region to find out the hidden treasures. Because too often the tourists and the boats are going to take you to all of the places that they think that you want to go see. But I've always found that the best places are the ones that the natives tell you about that you don't necessarily know about. So I'd love to hear some of the places that are maybe the historical places that everybody knows about, but also some places that you think are your hidden treasures.
Well, for me, if I were to come here from another country, I would definitely come to Lake Vättern, the northern part, because there we have the island system. I don't. It's kind of like a coastal system. It is really not because it's a freshwater lake, but it's a big lake. I would rent a boat during midsummer and go out to an island that's called Deer Island.
Hmm.
And the party you're gonna have over there, that's the most fantastic. That is love all the way. Everyone is happy. It's just, yeah, it's a beautiful place, and you're gonna be in one of the cleanest lakes in Sweden, so you can actually go down and drink the water if you're thirsty. So that would
Wow.
be my top tip, actually.
That sounds like a wonderful tip. I have to keep that in mind and everything. And what do you think of the places that most people think of when they think of Sweden? Because I know that there are certain tourist attractions that are always drawing people. So do you think that those are good tourist attractions, or are they just kind of like the ones that maybe are a little bit overranked and things along those lines?
Now, if you come to Sweden, you have to see the royal house, you have to see the parliament, you have to see those things. I mean, that's part of who we are, most definitely. So, but shouldn't forget about the northern Sweden, Sweden in the north either, because we have our native people up there, and yeah, it's we are quite diverse in from top to bottom, so to say. But isn't every country the same? And we all have our holding points that we're holding dear to our hearts. And the capital is great. You should go up to Pajala, it's called. It's awesome. It's a mining community. You're going to see amazing environment up there. You should go down south. You're going to see how beautiful buildings were built, and you can go to the west and meet Gothenburg and go on amusement parks. And I would recommend that if you got the time. But we're a small country compared to the States, also. So I don't know. We are like 200 kilometers long, the whole of Sweden. So maybe an American can blow through that in like 2 weeks or something. I don't, because you have quite the distances where you are.
Yes, yeah, from New York to California is definitely a long trip. I know some people that have made that trip, and it is not a short trip in the least bit. But I do know some folks that have attempted to do that. I think that of the 50 states that exist, I've probably been to less than half of them. But definitely, I know some other folks that have gone to probably all 50 states, but they've also done a good job of traveling the world, and they can tell you many countries that they have been to. But that is actually something I need to do more of, is that international travel and things along those lines. One of the things, and I know one of the reasons you're going on this trip is to celebrate diversity and inclusion. So I was wondering, one, how this idea came to you, but before we get to that, is more about the nature of the diversity that exists in Sweden. Because, like you just alluded to, every country has its indigenous population, whatever that is, and everything. And then there are different people that come in to the countries from other parts of the world. So I imagine that in Sweden, there might be some people that are coming from some of the African nations or some of the Asian nations and things along that line. So I was just wondering, how diverse do you find the Swedish population to be, and how diverse do you find it to be compared to other parts of the world. And then I'd love to get more into your ideas of the reason for this trip and what you need. Because I know one thing you need is investors, because I've definitely talked to you about some of the things that are needed in that realm. But definitely, I'd love to hear your ideas around diversity there in Sweden.
Uh, this is a tough one because Sweden has always been almost open borders.
Yeah.
We don't shut people out. I can make a quick comparison to the States if you want to. You have
Yeah.
like the green cards are 50K a year.
Mm-hmm.
And Sweden, with our small population, we took in over 200,000 immigrants in 1 year. And I'm not going to say that was a smart move because we took in more than we could take care of. Because we got to remember, these are people that actually need help as well. They don't just need a refugee, they need help. They live with traumas, they've seen people die. And so we got ourselves in a little pickle. We're working ourselves out of it. But yeah, we got people from everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Lately, these last 5 or 8 years, people have been coming from Middle Eastern countries. We have a lot from Africa, of course, but we have a lot of Asians as well. So we have people from all around the world here, and we try to be as embracive as we can. But being a Swede is also being very, very cautious. We are very, very, how should I say it, protective about ourselves. We don't trust people easily. But when we do, we trust them full on instead. So it's an on and off button. So we have been working with that. We minted a lot of laws against racism and anti-diversity. That actually fed into a new problem instead. The racism doesn't go away just because you make a law about it. It just hides away.
Right.
And if you can't cure what's hidden, that's like finding a disease you can't see. So yeah, we got ourselves in a little pickle, but we'll work it out. We always do. We like to see the positive things. We don't complain too much. We just put boots on the ground and keep on marching.
Makes
That's
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you actually raised an interesting question, because I know around here in the United States, there's always conversations around what you're describing, which is what some people would call institutional racism, and the racism that may exist in the corporate land or in the government and not necessarily being done by the common folks. But then I guess the counter argument that I've heard is that people are afraid that you are blaming people for their past wrongs, because like that is a conversation I've heard as well, where people are saying that they are being blamed for the actions of their ancestors, and they are not necessarily the ones that are doing that same activity, whether we're talking about slavery or whether we're talking about some of the other things that exist. And I actually am one of those people that do believe that institutional racism exists in certain industries and that it can be a cause for alarm. But I was just wondering your thoughts about that, and your thoughts about this whole concept of institutional racism, and whether it's something that you've observed there, and your observation of even what you've seen in the United States as an outsider looking in.
most definitely. I can't say it doesn't exist. I mean, just look at the top 5% of our business and our government. We have 8 parties. We have one black leader. So, and that's for a minor party as well. And they might not be there the next election either, because their polls are really bad. If you look in the business side of it, in the industries, we barely anyone is represented. Maybe in lower levels, but no. And when I've been in the States, I've been to New York and Miami, so I can only speak for those two places. I actually felt it was quite segregated, if I'm going to be honest. It felt like people of other cultures were actually more in the service business instead of. But that's the people I met also. Let's not forget that. I don't know how it looks in the top of your businesses or your governments at all. I don't know the representation per person.
Yes.
But what I saw, I felt it was segregated. And yeah, but I don't really want to say anything about it because what I think is that I'm not getting the full picture as well. And without the full picture, it's really hard to point a finger. But I've seen a lot of other problems that are lifted, like the police brutality, and we see the different. You still have the Ku Klux Klan for some reason in the states. I don't. That's beyond my understanding, but we can help everyone. So let's open our heart. As I said, I know I'm going to get a little bit of a storm ramping up behind me after this as well. It's not all candy and roses here. Some people really don't like this, what I'm doing. So, but what I try to say is that I love those people too. I don't love their actions. I don't love their views, but I still love the person. And that's where I want to come with everything, because we need to open ourselves to be able to help people that want the help. Not everyone does, though. Unfortunately, not everyone wants help.
That's very true. Not everybody wants the help that you're offering or the help that's out there for them and all of that. That being said, tell us a little bit about the trip. I know that you're planning to make this trip in next year sometime and everything, but I was wondering, now is the trip just going to be literally from Sweden to the United States with just kind of like going through the ocean, which is a very choppy trip and everything, particularly on the kind of boat that I saw, because it was not exactly a big boat. It was more of one of those kind of like thinner boats and everything. And also, are you going to be stopping at various places along? So is part of the trip also going to be stopping at other destination points, or is it pretty much just Sweden to the United States?
No, it's I have 17 ports I'm gonna enter. We're gonna have an event in each port. Right now, we're just planning out what event fits the right port, because we want to celebrate. Because what people tend to forget is that even if I'm fighting against racism, they tend to forget that I'm celebrating something instead, and that's what the events are gonna be. We're gonna celebrate great people like the Dalai Lama. I mean, that guy is awesome. You can't find them. If we would have one person to lead the world, I wish it was Dalai Lama. I mean, he just says, "Enlighten yourself." That's the whole thing. So we're gonna have 17 different stops. We got a couple of them in the stateside, because, and who knows? Maybe I get to sail some more and cross over to the west side of the states as well, and keep on doing it, because this is fun, and yeah, it's gonna be dangerous. I had a friend that was gonna join me, but when he saw some of the messages I've been getting since I'm starting to promote this really hard now, so he said he couldn't be involved in it. And I understand him. It's nothing wrong. I don't hold him accountable for that. This is my mission, so it's up to me to bear the responsibility of it as well.
Well, a couple of questions that raises and everything. One is when you say you're celebrating the different cultures and everything. So, can you give us an example? Like, I know one of the stops is going to be New York, and you're going to be stopping at, I believe, Ellis Island, which of course is a historical entrance point for many people in the country. And I'm assuming that that's the reason that you're going to be celebrating there. So, let's just start with the states. Where, other than Ellis Island, what are some of the other stops, and what are some of the celebrations going to be looking like? And do you have any idea yet, or is that still something that you are in the process of organizing with different event organizers from those various regions?
Well, I got one place is planned in my head. I'm still trying to get that through to my crew as well, that this is what I want to celebrate. But we got, as it looks now, if I don't change the plans for another stop in the States, we got Miami, because I love Miami. It's open, people are they're kind, and let's face it, inclusion and diversity, they like that. Most of them anyway. So that's gonna be a good party. I'm gonna stop in Virginia, Norfolk, also. I'm thinking of having an event there, but I'm right now looking for the right person to celebrate on that event. It's quite hard, because you have a lot of great people to celebrate when it comes to diversity and inclusion in America.
Yeah.
And then we have Ellis Island, of course, and that's my MLK moment. That's where I want to salute MLK all the way. And yeah, it's hard to say anything because I can't say too much either about the events or something. Because if I say something and might change it up later, people might, well, I thought you were going to do this, but we're going to come out with the information in due time. And since I'm getting some traction now and some motion here with you and another couple of podcasts and some write-ups, I think the information won't be missed for anyone anyway. So that's what I hope anyway. So.
It sounds like a great visit. And speaking of the West Coast, we have a person commenting all the way from Beverly Hills. So they are actually part of a Beverly Hills, looks like some sort of travel organization, but they were giving us a greeting from Beverly Hills, California. So it looks like they were definitely letting you know that they were listening, because it is morning, actually starting to be afternoon there in their region, but they haven't quite crossed the 12 o'clock hour. But definitely they were letting you know that they were watching and enjoying our conversation. And who knows, maybe that can represent some of the things on the West Coast. Can you talk about some of the places that you're going to stop, not just in the United States, but on the globe as well, and what some of the messaging will be in those stops? And you don't have to go through all 17 of them, but we can get like some highlights of some of the global stops as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop in London because no, it's Plymouth. It's because I can't sail inside London because England is still. I don't know how the future looks for England. So, but Plymouth because and we're gonna find some great person that we're gonna celebrate from that country. The theme is gonna be that I'm gonna celebrate the biggest heroes in these fights in each country I come to. So when I enter Germany, we're gonna find a hero there that actually did something really great, that helped fight racism, that lifted the question, that actually got into action, that got the gears moving. When I get to the Netherlands, we're going to do the same thing all over again, but with a different character. And the most important thing here is that we're going to use all kind of people as well. We're going to unite the people in one big celebration of you just got up and you did it. So that's kind of the theme. Go up and get it done. That's so. Where the place I'm struggling most with right now is actually Portugal, Lisbon. We're gonna stop there, of course. It's not a lot of history I can get out of that country. It's hard, but I'll find the right connections, and of course we'll find the right person to celebrate. You have people from there as well that has fought for diversity and inclusion. So I just have to find out who they are and what they did, so I know who to celebrate.
Makes a lot of sense. You got to find out. And speaking of people to help you celebrate, apparently Sherry's company is a public relations firm, and she's actually leaving her website in case folks wanted to reach out to her, including yourself, to help with this whole endeavor and everything. You've mentioned a couple times that you're going to be celebrating different people in different countries. Now, are you going to be the one doing your own research to determine who's going to be celebrated, or is there like a process being involved to determine who's going to be celebrated? Because like I said, you definitely mentioned an iconic figure in the sense of Martin Luther King. Definitely everybody knows him. Definitely everybody knows the Dalai Lama. Definitely everybody knows people like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. But there are also some heroes that I feel don't get enough respect and everything. And like I said, a lot of people, if they talk about slavery, they will definitely mention Harriet Tubman, and sometimes they'll mention Sojourner Truth. But I don't know that Sojourner Truth gets the same kind of support and recognition as she should. And she did some great speeches back in that day and everything along those lines. But I was just wondering what the process is. Is it your own individual research, or is there a process that if somebody is, say, from the Norfolk area, because you mentioned Norfolk, and that's actually not that far from Durham, North Carolina, but they might want to celebrate somebody in the Carolinas and Virginia that they know? Would they just get in touch with you, or how would they do it, or is this all based on your research?
No, they can most definitely get in touch with me. Through Instagram would be a great platform in my case, because that's where I'm most active. Right now, I'm just working the same post over and over again to get the message out there. But feel free to DM me. I'm always open. And if I'm awake, I'm going to answer you. But the research, yeah, if you have someone you think that deserves a spot, obviously I'm going to look at it. I'm going to have people look at that person as well. And But in the end, I think since I'm the creator and I'm the one that's ultimate responsible, I'm gonna have to pick what I think suits everything best. And if the good folks of Virginia thinks that their candidate is better than what I can find, well, who am I to say that they are wrong? I mean, they know their history a lot better than I am. I'm just a blue collar guy. I'm not a historian here, so I'm open for suggestions, and most definitely, I would love the help, all the help I can get. So,
Well, speaking of help that you can get, I actually invited a good friend of mine who's actually out of the Buffalo area and out of New York, but also a member of the Lawyer's Den to join us, and he has joined us right now. So, Bill Tresvant is a member of the Lawyer's Den, which is one of our programs here on the international broadcast media and everything. And definitely, I'm sure he might have some thoughts as well. Dennis, by the way, Bill is going on a worldwide trip because he is definitely recognizing that racism does exist, and he wants to celebrate diversity and inclusion around the world and things of that nature. So he's actually said that when he gets to the East Coast, he's going to stop in Miami, the Norfolk area, and New York, to be more exact, Ellis Island. He's also going to different other parts of the world. And we've been talking about his upbringing, being a kind of person that was involved in the boating industry and having family in that industry as well. But definitely a fascinating individual. And I know that you've traveled the world. I don't know if you've ever been to Sweden, because he was telling me about some parts of Sweden that I should go visit if I ever get a chance to get there. And I don't know if you've ever been on a boat, but the way he was describing the boat, it's not exactly a big like ocean liner kind of boat, because I have been on a cruise, so I know what those boats look like. This is that boat that is very much of an adventuristic boat and all of that. So it's not a easy boat to maneuver in that great blue ocean and everything. So I don't know if you've ever been on one of those boats or not, but I know whenever I look at them, I'm going like, that looks really fun, but really scary. I'm just gonna be honest, Dennis. But that's kind
it's
of my
not a
attitude.
problem.
Well, I actually, just to answer that one, because that's a low hanging fruit. I have been on a boat, but it's more of a dinghy. But it seems to me, large, medium, or small, as long as it floats. So, hope floats, the boat floats. We'll go from there. But I was really intrigued, Dennis, because Mark actually, and I appreciate the honor. It's a pleasure to meet you. Mark had mentioned earlier, and one of the reasons why I was honored, at least for Mark to have me, is because he had mentioned your journey on the exploration of diversity, and I was really intrigued in how you were going about it. It seems interesting. A journey of this type. It seems to me maybe 50 years ago, back in the 1960s and 70s, the world really wouldn't be up for this kind of idea. That is somebody going around and celebrating diversity around the world and asking the questions. So that's all to say this. I want to comment on one other thing. On a program on another network this past weekend, it was a news magazine show. They did a story on quote unquote passing people of different races looking or being either being seen as black or seen as white or seen as something other than they are. And it was very interesting. So I wanted to ask you, on your journey and exploration of diversity, is that one of the subjects that you're looking at, not just the diversity of the various cultures, but also within the cultures, Dennis?
Most definitely. We're out promoting that we're all, we are, I should say I am, to be more honest. It's me on the boat, but I got a village behind me. So the thing is that I want people to understand where you come from, it doesn't really matter. We're all united, because there's an old saying, divided we fall, united we stand. So I want to get pause, but I would really love to dig myself, because I don't know too much about that subject that you're lifting, but I'm most definitely going to dig into that soon. It sounds like a tasty little cookie to learn about. And the more I know, the better it is. I've been sitting in groups here on Clubhouse for the last weeks, trying to learn about Black history more from the people themselves, just to embrace, because I can never relate to the pain they have or the history they have, but I can at least try to understand.
Yeah. Can I ask a couple of questions? Because I've never been to Sweden, and I'm really curious. Sweden's often portrayed as racially monolithic. Is that true or no?
Yeah, well, we have laws that says it's true, but if you
Well,
look
I mean,
behind,
you have people of color in Sweden, right?
most definitely, we are a very multicultural
Uh-huh.
society. I think we're up to, is it 30% that isn't born here?
Uh-huh.
Well, there has a foreign
Okay.
heritage, so
Okay,
Yeah.
because I was curious because there were a couple of I don't know where it was, but I was watching a program, and I guess, and I think it's Sweden, that there's a celebration around Christmas time where part of and I think it's Sweden, I'm not sure, where they dress up in blackface because it's the partner of Santa Claus.
no, no, we don't do that here in Sweden.
Where?
It was what you're. The only incident that I heard that happen is one girl one time was at a Halloween party
Uh-huh.
and tried to do that, but it got a lot of media attention, and she's living under protection right now because, as you might have
Right.
foreseen, that wasn't really appreciated.
Yeah.
No, we.
So then how did the society react to that? I mean, I get that maybe it was overwhelming. That's it. But I mean, what kinds of discussions did that produce or provoke in Sweden?
Yeah, it triggered the same discussions that we always have. How we perceive race, how we can see people of color, because we're taught here in Sweden poorly, I would say, about racial equality, because we are more taught that we're all the same instead of, because I don't think we're all the same. That's not what I'm saying, because we're taught not to see colors, unfortunately. They want to teach us that we're the same people, we're Homo sapiens and all that. And that is true to a certain extent, because if I take away the black color from a colored person, that means I'm taking away some of the history as well. I'm taking away some of his identification or history, so to speak. And we can't do that either, because what we're going through now, what we've been training for the last 20 years, is to reamp that narrative to actually embrace, instead of not seeing the colors, we're going to embrace the colors. We're going to see the person who they are, what their history is, and try to live by those rules instead. And that blackface thing that you talked about, it triggered it got violent here in Sweden. Actually, we had a couple of minor fallouts and people got hurt. And
Okay, because you see, Dennis, I appreciate that because Mark, and don't mind me, Mark. I just come in, I nose around, and I'm
No
just
problem.
asking questions. But don't mind me, Mark. Listen, because you and I have a very interesting, background when it comes to race. And what Dennis is raising is how do we both celebrate our uniqueness and our differences, and yet at the same time, appreciate when we're together. And Mark, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to, you and I have had private discussions about this.
Right.
I'm half black and half white.
Mhm.
And so there is always that dichotomy. Now, Mark, the reception or the kind of response that Dennis just talked about in Sweden today would never have happened when about the time you and I were born.
Right.
I mean, society was very, very, very different. And you and I have had to navigate a very, very different kind of, both celebration of our diverse heritage, and yet at times hiding our diverse
Yeah,
heritage.
and I can actually
Mark,
respond
how
to
have
that.
you done it? No, Mark, here's my question. How have you done it?
Well, I was going to say that one of the things that I do, and actually it comes back to something that Sherry is bringing up that I'm going to bring up on the screen as well, is that you celebrate the various parts of your heritage. I definitely identify primarily because that is actually more of the bloodline and everything, if you want to do divisions and everything, because it's not like a half and half kind of situation as I believe it is in your family and everything. But I do celebrate the African American part of my heritage, and that is actually considered the majority part of the heritage. But I also acknowledge the European part of my heritage, and I also acknowledge the Native American part of my heritage. Now, I do have some family members that actually choose, and this is a choice matter, to identify more with their Native American part of their heritage than they do with other parts of their heritage. And they are therefore very much involved in, say, the powwow culture and the things along those lines, because that is very much what they choose to do, is identify with that part of their heritage based on how they were raised and how family members may identify. Because some of it is also self-identification. Some of it is true identification based on the birth certificates and things of that nature. But there's also self-identification. And what I was going to bring up that Sherry brought up and everything was that she was saying that she wished that we would share the story of the Black Wall Street in the 1930s here in the United States, and explore the time when, she said Black people, I almost say African Americans from that era were starting their own businesses, and that all African Americans were not poor and destitute. Some of us were privileged back in that time. And actually, I was having this conversation earlier, talking about my grandma with a friend of mine in the West Coast, because I was saying how there was definitely been some people that were raised among the elite, and even the elite in our own community. And sometimes we don't even acknowledge that part, because I was mentioning how Langston Hughes and Arna Bontemps actually in their letters to each other referenced my grandmother, because they were saying that they were going to stop at Grandma Molly's house because she was definitely seen as one of those elite folks that you might stop at, being a major librarian here in the Southeast and everything, and her husband being a major biology teacher at that particular time and everything, but definitely being involved in the science world. But I don't know that we oftentimes talk about kind of those class divides that also exist in our community. And some of those class divides were very much positive class divides, in the sense that they created some powerful communities like Haiti, like Tulsa, but then some of the forces that be in government and other institutions help tear down those institutions. And there are now people trying to raise them back up and actually raise up the power that exists in our Black middle class. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, actually, Mark, on that point, and with regard to the issue that she raises, it's an interesting thing. There indeed is a strong but often non-discussed history that there were a number of free African Americans, and in fact, what a number of them did is they changed their last names. We always talk about when you go to Ellis Island, some of the names, they changed their names right there at the boat. And Dennis, when you get to Ellis Island, it's absolutely beautiful. It's worth it. But the thing is that some African Americans changed their surname to Freeman. Mm-hmm. So whenever you meet an African American who has the surname of Freeman, it's that their ancestors were free. And so in order for them to really make a statement culturally, they changed their names to Joe or Mary or George or whatever, Freeman, to designate and indicate that indeed they were descendants of free people. What she also talks about, it's not just in Tulsa, it's also particularly down in Louisiana, right, when there was an entire mixture of color across the spectrum, but it involved both free, French free, mulattoes, all kinds of different cultures coming in and mixing. And it actually raised this unique thing. In fact, in our history, you had free African Americans, various color on the color dial, buying other African Americans, ostensibly, actually buying them and then giving them their freedom. So there were any number of ways that we actually got to freedom. And thereafter, just to add this one little piece, it is remarkable how vastly silent history is on the free Black influence in early American culture. And the reason why it seems odd when we talk about it today, it's because nobody's ever talked about it. So it seems like, we're just kind of spinning stories from whole cloth, when in fact it wasn't just one Black Wall Street in Tulsa that they destroyed. It pockets everywhere, from California down through Texas, all the way through the South. There's example after example after example, and more importantly, up in the North, because it's particularly true in the North. The North is always seen as, or north of the Mason-Dixon line, is often seen as this haven that does not have a history of slavery and or free Black people or free people of African descent. And the exact opposite is indeed true. But Dennis, on your journey, you're going to find that it is multifaceted. And it's really interesting in terms of how you go and who you talk to, because the culture is deep and it's rich. And I think in some respects, you're on the cutting edge of this kind of exploration. Dennis?
Yes.
No, your thoughts. I mean,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah, two people that are mixed descent running around from different things.
No, but for me, this journey is just to actually, if I can do it, other people like myself can do it as well. Because I'm gonna be honest, we white middle-aged men are not really. I don't know how many you can say that aren't privileged that has spoken out on this. So I want to kick in that door and show the world that we're actually here supporting as well. That's and the history, yeah, I really need to learn that a lot more, and I'm trying here. As I said,
Okay.
I'm.
Well, Dennis, if I could ask you, because I know it doesn't apply to you, but you see, it's discussions like these that really open up the door, and I really do appreciate it because we're having the kinds of discussions that I think the rest of our community needs to have. And don't mind me, I don't mean to be
You're
blunt,
good.
but when you talk to other white middle-aged people, oftentimes I get the sense that when you bring up issues of past oppression, that they just reject it and they start with arguments like, "Well, if that's not my fault. It shouldn't apply to me.
Right.
And why do I have to be bothered? Because that was 100 some odd years ago, or 30 years, 50 years ago, or 30 years ago. And why are you? I mean, what is it about? Do you see that as white denial, and or what is it about that they don't see the connection? That there's this direct line in terms of the issue today, Dennis.
Yeah, I see it most definitely as a denial. I was quite myself was living in denial for a long time. It comes from my upbringing. We are taught that we should be, as a children never fear anything.
Uh-huh.
But if the parents tell you you might be watching out for that, we get fearful. And I
Well,
think when fear roots itself so far as when you become an older man as well, it's easier just to deny it and blame those guys in the past and say,
mhm.
I had nothing to do with that, than to say, okay, I might have a small part of this. It might be something, what am I doing that actually gets these questions sparked all the time? Why isn't the world over this? And that's where we have to start, I think. We have to
Okay, well,
look at ourselves.
okay, well, then let me ask you. I mean, how do you go? Let's just take, a middle-aged, a fully white person, you're whatever it is that's currently in a state of denial. Uh, how do you bridge the conversation to get them to understand that perhaps there's a possibility that there should be some uh, generational responsibility for what's gone on? Because I guess the argument on one side, Dennis, is this: is that generationally, while they did not participate actively, as in today,
Yeah.
but generationally in the past, all those actions led to this imbalance today, and
Yeah.
that there is a responsibility. So how do you bridge that gap? So let's just say I go to this typical middle-aged white person and I say, hey, listen, what happened in the past has resulted in this imbalance and we need to address it now. What kinds of discussions gets through to that person who's just saying, no, not me, I have no responsibility and therefore I don't care? What will get to them?
I'm gonna be honest with you, nothing, because that's a person that's not really interested in listening anyway. Because the thing I'm doing here is I want to open up to more people like myself, obviously,
Hmm.
but I'm thinking for the future. Because let's face it, we have had racism since I don't know, since
Hmm.
humanity began, I guess. Uh, but if I can sow a little plant in someone's father or someone's grandfather or someone's son,
Hmm.
that's enough for me.
Hmm.
Because the discussion has to be, we got to move away from the guilt side. Because as long as we're putting guilt on someone and blame on someone, I'm not saying that we're not to blame. I'm not saying we're, because I know that white middle-aged men, we haven't been good in history. I know we've been
Okay.
doing some stupid stuff.
No,
Yeah,
no,
But
no. You're absolutely right, Dennis. And I'm not trying to sit here and like assign blame. What I want to talk about in terms of this. So, and I'll just use the example. And I'm kind of going to the issue of reparations, at least here in the
yeah,
United States, because it's an up and coming issue. And so, for example, here in the United States, we did terrible things when it came to the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Now, you notice I say we. Now, I could easily say, hey, I wasn't alive, I wasn't responsible for that, and all this other stuff was therefore. However, I choose to say, well, we, because it is my country, and whatever they did, because I benefit and I live here, I have to take the good and the bad. So I say, yeah, it's right that we compensate them. And in fact, the United States did. But I guess when it comes to reparations, how can I get to say the typical middle-aged white person who is in denial, not to assign blame, but rather to say it's a process of healing, we ought to make reparations. How do I get that argument across? Because I'm not looking to blame. I'm looking to say, hey, listen, this is what's wrong, and we collectively have a responsibility, and part of healing and moving past is reparations. What are your thoughts on that, Dennis?
My thoughts are quite easy. I'm a simple-minded man in this way because I think relationships help bridge the most problems. I've said this 1,000 times before when I'm on different medias that love is the only way we can go forward. Even if you have that middle-aged white man that doesn't really want to take any part, he doesn't want to recognize that he has done that, the more he gets to know you, the better your relationship gets, the more he understands. That's the only way we're going to get through to them.
I want to come to something that actually Bill was bringing up, and it's related to what goes on even here on this network and everything. I've had the privilege a couple of times of being part of our news coverage that goes on every morning, Monday through Friday. And there are two gentlemen, one from Canada, one from Australia, that are very adamantly against, and I can just put it that way, both quotas and critical race theory. They oftentimes bring it up because they are not big fans of it. I actually think, in my mind, critical race theory is about expanding the knowledge base, kind of what you're talking about, Dennis, and acknowledging some of that great history that has existed, even when we're talking about the Black middle class and the Black Wall Streets and things of that nature. They actually feel that it's a little bit too much of the blame game, which is what Bill was referring to, and things along those lines. And their other argument about quotas is that it's not really truly achievable, because part of their argument is that you can't really have 15% of, say, the doctors, the lawyers, or whatever being the exact population that exists, because of whatever exists, whether it's job interest, whatever. There may be jobs that are somewhat going to be different and will have a different percentage. So there might be some jobs that are more greater women than there are men, and the same, there might be some jobs that are skewed more toward the Latin community. We can even make that argument around the construction industry and things of that nature. So I was just wondering your thoughts, Dennis, about quota systems, both here in the United States, but also worldwide, and this whole concept of critical race theory, which, like, to my mind, is really about just educating people, but some people also put it in that Marxist context. I actually think that similar to Black Lives Matter, is a misconcept, because I don't think that that's really what those people are that are in the modern day concept are talking about. I think that that's just, maybe they have some people in there that are part of their philosophy, but I don't think that that's the majority. But I was just wondering your thoughts.
Well, we can start on the quota system. I think I would say we need it, actually, because it's shown that if we get more representation in the diverse environments, we get better results. And if last time I looked, everybody likes good results, so let's go for it. I mean, if that helps, most definitely. And racial critical theories. For me, we're still Homo sapiens, my friends. That's one race. We just look different. That's nothing to be ashamed of. We have a different history. So I don't say that I really appreciate even the term racial in that way, because we're still going to be Homo sapiens. This has been determined. Nobody can take that away from us. That's the one identification we can have together. The thing that's going to separate us is how we deal with our history, and how we're looking forward, how we change the next history book. That's it sounds a bit liberal and maybe a bit, let's say, hippie talk, but it's so complicated to talk about that in these small sessions. So I mean, and I really need to read up on a lot of things. So I'm not gonna.
Well, Dennis, let me ask you, because regardless, I mean, you are a foundation of information, and I just want to kind of just keep asking questions to get your viewpoint, because it's so very rare that I get to have a direct conversation. Now, I've always been curious, and I've never been able to ask this question. We've certainly seen it here in the United States. When Trump ran, I mean, there was this real, America first, this nationalistic, this kind of, isolation, just nationalistic, maybe borderline fascist. That's here, but over in Europe, in various, political parties and elections, I mean, there's a real nationalistic trend over there. I mean, you see it, in politics, either in Germany or in Poland and various places. How do you look at that, and how come that's all coming back? I mean,
The
Europe certainly knows the result of that stuff. I mean, it was World War II and they lost, but now they're coming back, and I don't know why it's suddenly pop. How do you look at it as a European with that stuff?
I'm gonna give you a simple truth. We have the same here in Sweden. The nationalists are taking over. The reason is because we used to have a strong social democracy here in Europe, but they have actually abandoned the workers, the workforce. They used to be the worker party, and that doesn't comply anymore. They're more sitting in the corporate needs, and as long as they do that, the nationalists are going to take over, because we need a party that talks to the workers, who are the majority of the voting basis. But if they're going to keep talking to the big companies instead, their leaders, on how to help them get richer, and the workers are still going to get shitty terms to work on.
Okay, so then you've seen this trend towards nationalism, not nationalistic tendencies, not necessarily as being born of superior race theory, but rather neglect. It's because they're neglecting the economic needs that people then feel neglected, and therefore they attach themselves to something else, regardless of what it is, so that they feel like their voice is being heard. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying. And we have a really horrifying, I don't know if it was the last election or the election before that in Greece, in Greece, where Golden Dawn actually got a lot of votes, and they are not saying they're not fascists. They're saying they are Nazi. They're full-blown Nazis. So I don't know how we're gonna fix this, but the problem is you need someone that talks for the workers, the big majority. And I always said this when it comes to politics. I really have a hard time talking about it nowadays, because I've been a little bit more. I learned a little bit more. My grandfather always told me you should never trust someone who talks about your destiny behind locked doors.
Okay. I like that. If you don't mind, I'm going to borrow that. Never trust somebody who talks about your destiny behind. Okay, I'm listening.
I like that. I like that a lot. Speaking of talking about destiny behind locked doors and everything, you have alluded to it, and actually Bill alluded to it earlier. This is not exactly an easy trip, and I'm not just talking about the ocean and what's out in the ocean, like the sharks and everything else out there, but there are also a lot of people that are not exactly thrilled about this trip that you're taking. So I would love for you to share a little bit about how this has been, how you've been dealing with this, because a lot of times when we go on these great journeys, whether it's somebody like Martin Luther King or Frederick Douglass, if I go back in time and everything, you have to actually stand against the winds of popularity and things of that nature. So I was just wondering, how are you dealing with this, and how are you actually raising this issue of going and tackling this issue? Because this is a very big issue, not just here in the United States, but globally. But how are you getting the support, and also how are you dealing with those hate letters? Because you mentioned earlier that you've gotten some very serious hate letters. It even pushed some of your crew members to not want to go on this trip, or some of your supporters. So I'd love to know how you personally are dealing with this as an individual.
Well, those most of them, well, all of them have so far come from Instagram, and I think they're mostly kids that they're afraid of change. They don't really know. They just want to lash out. So I just send them a heart and tell them I love them as well. I mean, I can't do much more. If people want to hate, they're gonna hate. That's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And yes, I know as soon as this ramps up and the more people see that this is not just my dream, it's a reality. I'm working for it, and everything is coming to place. I already have a good friend. You have met him in some clubs, I think, Coach G, and he's actually helping me with security as well. Giving me a few tips. As if you look at my Instagram, I have nothing left on my family on there because that's going to be a weak spot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, of course I have to take precautions, but I'm not going to worry about the next hate mail I'm going to get, because that's just normal, unfortunately. I mean, we live in a digital environment, and not a lot of those people are really serious. I had a Russian guy who said he's going to board a submarine and shoot a torpedo on me as soon as I set sail on this God forbidden sail, and I love you too. I mean, that's all I can do. I can only show love. I mean, if I say I want to love everyone, I gotta love everyone. I can't say anything else, and I can't do anything else.
Okay, well, Mark raised an interesting point, and that is, the colleagues of yours that are helping you along the way. How are they looking at it? I mean, it's got to certainly be as dangerous for them as for you. Are they taking precautions or what?
Yeah, I guess they are. They are working more in the dark, so to say. And I've said it from the beginning. I'm gonna be the front person for this, because we know we're gonna aggravate, and people are gonna get insulted. But they're on my team, and I know they got my back. And yeah, sometimes you got to do a little bit of stealth mode to go places. So.
And speaking of having your back, I know I've mentioned him before, and he definitely has a show here on the network as well. So what are you doing to reach out to those folks that might have investments or have investment tools? I know that here on the show, and I've told you before, that there is a gentleman, Ben Banerjee, that is part of the Swiss Impact Fund. And of course, part of what they do is fund things that are supposed to be making a positive impact. So I'm hoping that I'll be able, through Nick or through Bill, to connect the two of y'all together. And I know that you're in Sweden, he's in Switzerland. So y'all are in somewhat of the same region and everything. But how are y'all going about reaching out to people that might want to help you on the funding level? Who knows? Bill might be wanting to open up his checkbook.
Yeah, who knows? The thing is, right now, I'm trying to. I have a couple of colleagues that are working on fixing the sponsorships and all that needed. But the old saying is, if you chase what you really want, and people get to hear about it, people will come to you as well. So yeah, we're having people looking into different investments, most definitely. But I don't want this to be a big investment and run that people makes a lot of money of. That's not what it's about. So I'm trying to find the sponsors instead that believes in what we're doing. And if anyone knows anyone, yeah, just DM me or mail me, or I'm not hiding, so I'm quite easy to find. You will see me a lot more as well. So
yeah, okay. And can you just repeat for the audience what your contact information is?
You have my Instagram. That's my name without the thing not the space in between and the one in the end. Dennis Eriksson 1, because Dennis Eriksson was taken by someone else, so I had to use a 1. And my mail is dennis.eriksson@yahoo.com. That's
the best way to get in touch with you. And definitely we hope that more people will get in touch with you and reach out to you. You mentioned, and I know that that's where I met you in Clubhouse and everything. How important has social media been for you, even getting this message out, and in terms of actually getting the word out, in terms of even finding the people that you want to team up with? So how important has social media been? Because we've heard both the good and the bad of social media. We've definitely heard about it being a great networking tool. We've also heard about our young people getting caught up in the light culture, and therefore there are some people that are saying that could even be pushes for the rise in suicide and some of the other things that are going on with our young people. So I was just wondering your view of social media and how it is even helping you in your cause.
I mean, social media is everything for me right now, because especially when we've been in a COVID situation, you're not allowed to do a lot of things. So social media has been really great for me. That's the only tool I use actually as well. So I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm using anything else. And about the like culture and all that, yeah, that's it could be hard to get caught up in it, most definitely. I mean, especially the younger generation, where they see influencers making like a lot of money, and they kind of lose track on it's not supposed to be about the money, my friends. It's about to do what you love and what you really care about. So if we can get that generation just to understand, do what you love and you don't have to work another day, then they're going to be golden too. But it's hard. The younger generation, even I'm having a hard time talking to them because I don't understand half the words they're saying. They're using a new language, so I'm learning that as well.
Yeah, they're definitely using a new language, but there are some people that are thinking that this next generation, the Gen Zs or the Gen Ys, I always get my generations confused and everything, might actually be the most um, politically active generation in a long time. I know definitely the 60s was a very active generation, but there is some conversation that this could be one of the most active generations. But then there are some people in the older generation that have called it the most woke generation as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts about where our young people are, and do you think that they are maybe a little bit too politically active, or do you like where they are? Because I'm actually a big supporter of a lot of our young activists, even like Greta over there in one of the European countries that was very much involved in climate change.
Yeah, I definitely love that there are that political involvement, because that's what's needed in the world right now. We need to change out all the old guys in government and place some young, really people that believes in ideals again and don't want to do it for the profit. Who knows? They might change out the whole system, and who knows? We might have to vote about everything. But I don't see that as a bad thing. But I can see the older generation over me thinking that this generation is going to lead to the downfall of society, because, well, they are running around with their phones, and I can see my dad, he really doesn't understand that at all. He thinks they're just goofing off and getting nothing done. And I tell him that, well, they're actually connecting in that way. We used to go out and play. They actually use their phones. That's the way it is today. And it's hard to work in that environment maybe, but if someone's gonna do it's gonna be the next generation. And that's why I think this sale is important, because we need to tell the young generation as well what moral standards to stand on, and what we believe is right.
Okay, well, Dennis, do you think, because there's always a backlash, but do you think that because we see it now, and often they refer to it as cancel culture, which is also, I guess, another word. Somebody says something in some form on social media, and then the rest just come in and they just crush, the speaker, whoever was saying stuff. But do you see that the current dynamic as a function that young people just don't understand history, meaning that maybe they're just not as aware, and that if they knew that we had actually already had these fights, decades ago, that they don't need to be having these fights right now? Do you think that's it, perhaps, Dennis?
Yeah, most definitely, William. The problem is with the younger generation, I would say, is that they have found it really, really easy to be aggressive and threatening on social media. What I see as the biggest problem is they don't learn the life outside as well, the social structures that's holding our generations together. We know how to conduct ourselves if we're going to fine dining or whatever, but the younger generation kind of loses this, because it's all in the web today. Even if you're going out to eat, you gotta post that Snapchat picture on what you're eating. I'm not saying anything. I'm sitting on my phone right now like 14 hours a day and driving my family insane by unfortunately neglecting them to get this done. But sometimes you got to do that as well, unfortunately. So, but yeah, the younger generation, I think they'll need to learn to be more logic and less sensitive, if I'm going to be honest, because people are really, really sensitive these days as well. We
Mark, okay, Mark. Listen, are they too woke or are they just snowflakes, Mark?
What was the question again? What did you ask, Bill?
I said, okay. I mean, listen. Do you think that the younger generation being politically active, which you support, being quote unquote woke, but then you've got cancel culture where the backlash is so just overwhelming. Um, and Dennis seems to think that maybe the backlash is because people are just too sensitive.
There's some of that
Like
sensitivity, and I can definitely.
you've heard the term snowflakes. So I mean, are the younger generation, are they just woke snowflakes, or what
Well,
are they?
no, I wouldn't say that, but I would come to back to something else that definitely Dennis brought up into the conversation as well. And actually, the founder of this lovely network has also been a big proponent of as well. I actually think, and I know Nicholas has brought it up, and I've actually brought it up with other guests as well, that unfortunately our education system is also jacked up. And I think that it's not just here in the United States, but I think it's globally. Because I know that one of the quotes that Nicholas oftentimes brings up is that we are teaching 18th century values in the 21st century. And I agree with that a lot, that we're still stuck in a very like old mindset. Like there was a lot of things that we used to be taught that I don't even know are being taught in schools that much and everything. I remember when I went to school in the 70s, there was actually people taking vocational ed, and I don't even know how often that is going on in our schools. I definitely know that there were people that had home ec courses, and it wasn't just the young ladies. There was also guys that learned how to cook and do other things along those lines. And I don't know that there's enough of that even going on now and everything. And I see that Dennis has got his dog over there in the picture as well. And I don't know that there's even enough people learning how to take care of pets when they're young as well. So I just wondering your thoughts about this. Do you think that, like Nicholas, who is one of the founders of the network, talks about, that we are in the 21st century, which we clearly are, but we're still using 18th century values in terms of the way we're teaching?
Dennis or me?
Dennis.
So we're absolutely using 1800 centuries values. I know here in Sweden we have tried to bring that up a bit. And we are in education. The last time I looked, we're still top 10 in the world, and we're really trying to change the way we educate people right now as well, the younger generation. And I hope it takes a spin. I'm looking at what my children are learning. They're 7 and 8 years old, and yeah, it's not the same things that I was learning anyway. I mean, they're talking about totally different topics in social society knowledge and all that. So I think we're trying to bring it up to speed, but as everything in education, it always goes slow because, well, if you go too fast, you can really mess it up, and that would be a generation messed up, and that's not good either. So,
Yeah,
we need to.
I was going to come back to Bill and everything, because Bill, like I said, I know you've heard Nick say that even on the Lawyer's Den and other shows, but actually Dennis just brought up an interesting point, which is actually that Sweden is in the top 10, and depending on which part of education you're talking about, we're not even sometimes in the top 10. We sometimes are below that and everything. So I was wondering what your thoughts are about the education system here in the United States, because I do know that Sweden and some other countries are ahead of us in that curve.
Well, I mean, it's as complicated as race when it comes to education, because first of all, and here's what, at least in the United States, this is one of the unrecognized problems, which is one of source of some of the conflict. It's let me begin by saying this: it's who, I mean, when you talk about what the education and what we're teaching them, and what we're teaching them is about society, and we're teaching them about the past, essentially, because we need to educate them to bring them up to speed so they can function in society. So then you say, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. That's our goal. So then our goal becomes, okay, well, then what are we going to teach? And historically here in the United States, it's been this European-centric model of education. It's been all about the history of Europe and the ideas and the notions and the concepts that came from Europe. And there's been nothing about essentially the rest of the world. And significantly, you can say Africa, but you can also say just about every other country of color. So, I mean, that would include, brown, black, yellow, I mean, you've got India, they've got 1 billion people. There's a history there. So the question becomes, how do you approach what you're teaching here? So, for example, some people could say American history, America was discovered by Christopher Columbus. And then the settlers here, the colonists, then revolted for freedom, and they established a free, America, and that's who we are today. Hug the flag, okay? Or you could say, hey, listen, Native Americans were already here. Christopher Columbus said, well, the Vikings came, 1,000 years ago. Then Christopher Columbus showed up. Then the Spanish came, and they all screwed around and messed up the American Indians and stole the land and pushed them out to the west. And then they brought Africans over and made them slaves. And the slaves and all the people of color, including the Chinese out in California, they built the railway, they built the infrastructure. And now we're here and we declare ourselves, a democracy. Hug the flag. So the question becomes, which history are we teaching?
And that's actually a question. That's what I was going to ask Dennis and everything, because actually you raised a good point. We just recently celebrated earlier this month Christopher Columbus Day, and definitely it's now become Indigenous Day because they want to celebrate more of the Native American population. But as definitely Bill brought up and everything, Leif Erikson was here first. I haven't heard of a Leif Erikson holiday and things along those lines. So what is your thoughts about this?
No, Mark, if I may, a point of order. Dennis, I was actually going to ask you earlier in the program, but then it slipped away. It wasn't the right moment, but now is the moment. First of all, Leif Erikson, we know, has made it all the way to Minnesota. And in particular, do you know that in Milwaukee there is a monument to Leif Erikson? And I was going to ask you, any relation? Leif Erikson?
Sorry, I don't have any relations at all with him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he got on a boat. You're getting on a boat. You guys have the same last name. I mean, you're going on a journey. I mean, are you sure? I mean, maybe you want to go to ancestry.
I would hope so, because in that case, wouldn't my bloodline own America?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I was just being. I'm sorry, but
I'm just kidding with y'all.
Mark is right. I mean, whose history are you teaching over in Sweden? Because I mean, if you're top 10, whose history are you teaching?
We're teaching everyone's history here. First of all, we have our own history, but we are a really old country as well. We got to keep in mind that America is quite young still. I had someone did something on Instagram, said, we're about to be on our doom now, or have we gone too far? And I kind of reminded him, come on now, you're America. You're just a little baby in the evolution theory of being a society. So even if you mess up, you're going to learn from it and you're going to move on. You're going to be stronger and better than ever. That's the way it is. But we have a rich history for a long time back. So we get taught European history, we get taught Asian and Indian and American history. Unfortunately, I must say that our Black American history we get taught a bit about Martin Luther King, very, very little about Malcolm X. And that's about it, what we get for American history. But
okay, you're not talking about slavery at all?
We talk a little bit about slavery, of course. That's part of American history, but because in Sweden, that's a really big part of American history, unfortunately. It's a little bit of a Christopher Columbus, then it quite fast goes to slavery.
Okay, listen, on the issue of slavery, because I've always been curious about it, because apparently there's been a decoupling. So there's slavery on the one hand, it's slavery in America, and it's all this other stuff, except slavery didn't exist, except for beginning with Portugal and Spain and then England, because they were the ones running the ships. And so it seems to me, if you're talking about slavery and American history, it's got to be slavery and European American history, because it was the Europeans that brought it all over. So when they talk about slavery, do they make the connection of the European?
Yeah. We're doing
as part of teaching slavery, because here I can tell you, here in the United States, they do not teach that part. They teach slavery here in America, Black people versus the plantation, but they don't talk about the Europeans, because Portuguese started slavery, and then Spain jumped in, and then the United Kingdom, England, they were all into this stuff. So
definitely.
I'm curious about that decoupling.
No, we got that coupling still. We get taught how the trade lines went and all the slave lines and all that, or where which country was involved in the slavery. But we even get taught about slavery back in the Egyptian time. So for us, that is it's part of who we are. We get taught quite well about it. What I would like to see more is the people that fought against slavery. That's
okay.
that's the part we don't get too much. We get the bad part really well, how they were transported, how they laid in the ships and all of that, and who were transporting them and where they went to the cotton fields and the tobacco plants and all of that, how they were treated, but not really that much about who really helped them. Like I was watching, Netflix had this awesome show, Amend with Will Smith, the 14th Amendment. I didn't know who those people were until I watched that. And those people were quite significant, if I'm going to be honest. They did really big stuff. So, yeah, we got the coupling about who actually got the slaves to America and what happened there and how they got the slaves in Africa and all those places. But we don't get the solution. That's the problem.
Okay.
I think the Swedish learning system hasn't seen that it's actually has been a solution. Yes, they're free. They have the same rights. But are they really free, or do they really have the same rights?
Oh, well.
So,
it's interesting that you bring that up because you're actually right. I mean, zeroing in on that because we do have an example of that. For example, we have the country of Haiti. And what makes Haiti so unique is that, and it actually ties back to this whole notion of reparations. It's that, most people look at Haiti and they say, why can't they get their act together? And what most people don't realize is that as part of the bargain for their freedom, they had to agree, just think about this, their freedom, the nation, the government actually entered into an agreement to pay reparations to their former slave owners in order to set them free. And that Haiti, the government has been making those payments. And actually, I think they just finished paying them off somewhere in the night, either the 1990s or the early 2000s. The nation has been making payments for their freedom. Now, as a consequence of that financial burden, they've never been able to invest economically in their own country, which is why they're now so economically destitute. But they don't. So it's kind of funny that on the one hand, one model was, okay, fine, you can be free, but you're going to have to pay us for our loss. And so the black people in Haiti said, okay, fine, then we will pay you. And the government actually paid them off, paid reparations for their own freedom, but it's left them economically destitute. And the world looks at Haiti and says, you're all messed up economically. Then you have the other example where, say in America, they said, okay, you're free, but we're not going to give you any reparations. We're not going to ask you to pay us back, but we're not going to, pay you any reparations, and you're on your own. And so you're right. There are two different models for the solution.
No, there's definitely two models. And Dennis, that actually raises an interesting question. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I know it's come up in some of the clubhouse rooms and in some rooms that you've been in and everything. But what is your thoughts about the racial divide that exists between the economic divide? Because there's definitely not just a racial divide, but there is also the divide between the amount of wealth that is existing in the African American community and those that is existing in other parts of the community. And they're also times talking about the wealth gap. So I was wondering, when you're going on this trip, are you going to be exploring any of the wealth gap that exists, not just between African Americans and European Americans, but some people would also argue that it exists lesser extent with the Hispanic community, but does exist. And definitely some people may put the Asian Americans closer to the European Americans in terms of where their wealth is and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts as to whether that's going to be explored in this trip as well.
That's something I'm actually looking into, because that is the core of the problem. It's always find where the money goes. You're going to find where the problem starts. That's the core of everything, because we all want more. That's the negative part of being a human being. We always want to be better. We always want a little bit more, unfortunately. So yeah, most definitely I'm going to check into that and see if I can find something that actually fits to it. But it's not going to stop me from talking about it. Most definitely not, because we have to close the gaps. Before we close the gaps, everything else is it's good, but the gaps are what actually suppresses one people and kind of lifts the other people above. And you got to see the economics as a ladder. That's
so. I mean, I'm just asking. Don't mind me. If my question, I don't mind sounding stupid. So when people they're going to follow you on your journey, how?
I'm gonna obviously I'm gonna have my phone. I'm gonna have a lot of fixed cameras on the boats. I'm gonna have a handheld camera and a little couple of drones.
Where do we go on the internet to find you in order to follow you? Either the videos or things. Mark, can we do a banner and put his information up?
But we can definitely do that.
I'll work something out, because the problem is when you're crossing the Atlantic, and that the fees for internet traffic is they are immense.
Wow.
You're using satellite data then, and I can't send any pictures out, because that's just going to be extremely poor quality anyway, so you wouldn't see anything. But we're going to do it like every trip I take, every port I enter, I'm going to enter all the material I gathered from the cameras, all the memory cards and all of that, and all the cassettes and all. They're going to get that.
So are you going to do like a daily a daily video journal?
Yeah, most definitely. You're gonna see me go through all my emotions I'm gonna have on this trip. It's gonna be, I guess, the first week is gonna be seasickness. That's a given one. So that's I don't know if you like that stuff, but
well, no, I don't know. I mean, don't mind me. I'm just gonna ask a bunch of
no, I appreciate it, definitely. When is that first? When is the launch date again, Dennis? And I'm in the process of putting that together and everything. What Bill just asked me about, so I'm grabbing your Instagram website and I'm gonna put that across as a banner. But that being said, when is the launch date? And by the way, our friend, and I'm getting ready to bring up her last comment, or actually her last two comments, but our good friend that was been watching and enjoying the conversation was talking about her own relationship in terms of like the elite and non-elite in the African American community. So Sherry had said, I was born in the South in the 50s, and most of the African American people in my community owned their own businesses. And I guess I was of the elite with parents who set a higher goal for their children. So she had said that some time back, but she was also saying that she was finding this whole conversation very informative, but unfortunately she's got to go do other work and she'll have to catch the rest of the show in the replay of the ending. But she definitely has thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and was enjoying what we were talking about here and everything. And just really quickly and along the lines, as I get your banner together and everything, of notions of history and everything, you mentioned before we brought Bill on about your background as a pirate. And pirates are actually oftentimes romanticized and things of that nature. We also know that they were tied into slavery as well. So I'm just wondering, is the trip going to explore any of your own history in that regard? Because I know that pirates, whether we're talking about Blackbeard or some of the other famous pirates, is definitely oftentimes seen as a romanticized version of what goes on in that whole field and everything. But it's very much of a rough field, and some people would even say in certain kinds of piracy, an illegal field as well. But definitely I was wondering, how much of that are you going to explore on the trip and everything? Because piracy is oftentimes given that more romantic notion.
We're not going to explore too much of that actually at all, because as I've been trying to say, this show, I will be the front person for the show, most definitely. But the show isn't about me. It's just about showing, if I can do it, so can you. It's more about the action instead of the person. So for me to do to introduce my history into it as well, that would just amplify me, and that's not what we're doing here. So we can't amplify my importance more than steering the boat and trying to get this done. That's my part of it. That's what I want to get the message out. But who knows, maybe when I'm old and really on my deathbed, maybe we should do what is it called? A biography of my life. That could be
Dennis,
fun.
I mean, I'm kind of curious about this. I mean, how long do you expect the trip to take crossing the ocean?
The sailing time should be around 6 months from Sweden all the way over. Depends on where when we get the funding and everything is set in place. It could be everything from just 6 months to a year, depending on weather. Because there are some people that lived in Miami knows that you don't go sailing there after July, because then you have hurricanes, and
Right. Well, you see,
I kind of want to survive.
yeah, because that's what I was curious about. Because listen, we talked about Leif Erikson and obviously Christopher Columbus, but and it's also the Pilgrims and everybody that's across the Atlantic. Um, at least on a personal level, I mean, that's just you and Mother Nature out there. And
Yeah,
and there's that saying that regardless of the boat, but it's you know how mighty the ocean and how small my little boat is. And I mean, do you expect like an emotionally changing experience? Because it's going to be you and the stars, and in some respects, you'll be replicating the kind of emotional journey that other people went on. Except in your case, you know that there is an America. The other people kind of just went out, blind to saying.
yeah, they were hoping.
Yeah, they were hoping, not to fall off the edge of the earth. How are you thinking about that as an emotional journey, all those months out at sea?
Yeah, that's gonna be a rough one. I know I'm gonna miss my family. There are gonna be times where I fear for my life. I mean, I'm gonna be experience extreme fatigue as well, because it's not like I can switch on the autopilot and go to sleep for 8 hours and wake up, because I'm on a boat. There could be other boats out there, and I need to be watching out for those. The weather could return, so I'm gonna be sleeping for around 20 minutes, be awake 1 hour, sleep for 20 minutes, and that's going to be like 3 or 4 weeks. So that's going to tear down on me quite a bit. But most definitely, I know it's going to change me as a person as well. It does. Every great thing you do always change you in some way. It doesn't matter if you sail the ocean or you climb a mountain or if you drive a car really fast on the track. It's going to change you.
Okay, well, then let me ask you this, Dennis. I mean, because it's got to be a part of it. I mean, there's got to be a fear factor because you are sailing. I mean, even though there's a destination and you got a lot more safeguards or guardrails than other people had. But at the end of the day, you're out there and it's unexpected. And when you look out, there may be a point where it's like, oh, expletive delete. What did I do? There's got to be a fear. How much of that fear is there of the unknown, and how are you overcoming it?
Well, for me, it's I love sailing. I love the ocean in every way, but I do understand the horrors about it as well. I hate when I can't see the bottom when I'm gonna go take a bath, and I'm gonna be sailing where there's 2-3 kilometers of water under me. I'm not gonna know what the hell is under me at all. Sorry for the bad language.
No problem.
I mean, the only way I can deal with it when I'm out there, I can't turn back. I put myself there. I just have to push on. That's the only thing you're gonna be able to do. It's kind of like when you're in the army. It's even if you're tired, you just have to put one foot ahead of the other. You're gonna get where you need to go in.
How are you
Anyway,
going to prepare your family in that same regards? Because when I think about the great explorers, some of them definitely accomplished their journey, like of course, the Lindberghs and others, but some of them do not always accomplish the end goal. And there is always, as Bill is referring to, there's that survival aspect. So, like I said, we definitely want you to make it back and everything, but I do know that that is a reality because some of the great explorers did not make it back. I'm thinking about like the stories of some of the amazing people like Amelia Earhart and others. But I was just wondering, how are you preparing your own family to deal with the reality of what you're doing?
the reason as soon as everything takes off as it's supposed to do, I'm gonna shut myself off from the world and actually just be there. That's all I can do. Show them my appreciation, and it's partially for my family as well. I want to show my kids that if you set your mind to it, do it. Don't think about it. Just get it done. There's people out there that will help you get your goals. And so, yeah, About dying,
I mean,
that's the end question here, and you can't really prepare anyone for it. The only thing I can do is make sure that they know that I love them before I go. That's about as much preparation you can give them.
okay, well, let me ask you, what if, I mean, you know, you go through your journey, okay? And regardless of how it turns out, what if somebody in your family came to you 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years from now and said they were going to do this? How would you prepare
Yeah,
yourself to, you know, watch one of your loved ones go out there and do it? How would you feel if the roles were reversed?
yeah, I would say if I could tag along. I done it. Yeah, I know that's a hard one. That's a really hard philosophical question, because no, I would strongly recommend them not to if they really, really, really didn't want to do it. Because if they really want to do it, it doesn't really matter what I'm gonna say. They're gonna do it. That's, I mean, I can just tell them what I've been through and what I had to do to survive it, and let's hope they.
I want to come back to something that you brought up earlier. It's actually tied into what we're talking about and everything. And it's actually when you first came on, you talked about the fact that you're basically, and for lack of a better term, and I think it's the word you use, an average gentleman, an average Swedish, middle-aged white man and everything, but not a man of privilege. Now, I know that the argument that has been made when people have gone on space explorations is that it was basically a big joyride, because, like I said, they would go up in the ship and everything, and definitely they would come back. So what do you say to people that might be making the comparisons to what you're doing versus, say, what Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos are doing when they're going into these space rides? Because that's been a lot of what the conversation has been, is that, yeah, of course you can do it because you have the money to do it, and then you're not even actually going all the way into space. You're actually just crossing, like, I think the atmosphere's extreme and then coming down, which is why a lot of people are describing it as basically a glorified joyride. But I was just wondering your thoughts when people want to make the comparison to what you're doing versus what these billionaires are doing when they're going into space.
Yeah, I can show them my DMs later and see if they think it's a joyride. So that's not a problem for me. That's the easy way, because I know when we're doing this, my mailbox and my DMs are there are gonna be a lot of love there. I know that. I noticed the community is rising up and really stepping up to help me. But there's gonna be those bad people as well. And I can show them that. Yeah, it's really a joyride. I'm gonna need security for the rest of my life. So yeah, I really enjoyed the ride.
Understood. Definitely. Any more thoughts you've got, Bill? Because you've been raising some very interesting questions, and I appreciate you coming on and helping me out in this regard. So,
oh no, actually, I'm very fascinated. But this next, I do have another question that I've been dying to ask, but you know, because, and Dennis, I really do appreciate your flexibility, because I just have a million questions, and some of them are just things that I think people think that I think that we can ask. Are you going to bring a fishing pole?
Most definitely, yes.
I mean, you know, tell me about that, because, you know, in my limited world, I only see like videos like from Miami and stuff where they go out and they say deep sea fishing and they got the long poles and then they're fighting with like for hours. I mean, you're going to be out there on a boat and, you know,
yeah, I'm definitely.
What if Moby Dick shows up and, you know, and you caught Moby Dick? I mean, you know.
I'm cutting the line. No doubt about that. Moby Dick ain't coming aboard my boat. I'm only taking small fish I can eat.
Okay, so listen, so you are going to fish. That's going to be interesting. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I have to, because or else I'm going to be living on cans and reserves all the time. And the problem is I don't like fish either. It doesn't taste well. So, but it tastes a lot better than survival food. I'm going to tell you that much. So, yeah, I'm going to fish. I'm going to troll it a bit behind me and see what I can get. I mean, if I pick something up in the ocean, it's probably eatable.
Dennis,
I know my fish.
I cannot let that go and everything. So that was just too juicy of a piece of information to let go and everything. So let me make sure that I heard you correctly. A gentleman that is raised on the ocean, that has definitely spent all of his life in the ocean and everything, does not like fish. Did I hear you correctly and everything? And is it just fish that you don't like, or is it seafood in general that you don't like? Or how does this even work?
Just fish. I'm quite a picky eater, actually. I like seafood. I like big prawns. I like lobster, and I don't like crab. Some strange reason. I like shrimps. Fish. It's just a consistency. It's a special thing to. I like meat. That's good to chew. That's a little resistance. Fish just melts in your mouth, and that's strange.
Huh.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. Now, but is it when you bring a fishing pole? Is it going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4? You bring in 4. There's something like that in case one breaks, or so that you can have a couple of lines out at once. I mean, I'm just curious.
No, I'm gonna bring a couple of fishing poles. I have to have backups of everything, like my autopilot on my AIS, on my safety rafts, on my everything is backed up properly. Because if something breaks when I'm out there, I better be able to fix it, or else I'm just driftwood drifting around. So
okay, I have a different question, and this it really goes because I just want to know. We're in the digital world, and you're going to be downloading your video logs when you can, and the world is going to, benefit from your experience. And I'm really interested and excited to see that, the before and the during and the after.
Yeah.
For you personally, are you going to bring any actual books with you?
I've been thinking about it actually, but the problem I'm having is that I already read Lord of the Rings so many times. I don't know what else. Nah, I'm gonna have books. Obviously, I need books. I'm gonna need everything.
I'm just curious because it seems in a digital world that people, they would just assume that you would just bring digital versions of things and be on the journey to occupy your time. And I'm wondering if, given all the technology that you have, and you can certainly have ebooks or things of that nature, would you actually bring a book to read and kind of contemplate, kind of like a flavor of the old school?
Yeah, most definitely. The thing is that people don't realize that I'm not going to have too much time reading either. It seems like I'm going to be on a boat for 4 weeks and just sailing, but sailing is it's a contact sport, my friends. You got to trim the sails, you got to keep the heading right, and you really can't relax that much while you're sailing in the same way as you can do in a motorboat or something like that, because then you can just hit the engine and you're off. Winds can change, so you always have to adjust things. And since I'm going to be alone, I'm also always going to have to double check that all my safety features are working, and I'm going to have a hectic schedule out there. So yeah, it's going to be
very hectic schedule. Speaking of which, I know that a lot of times people that are into definitely sailing, they might also be in the other parts of the whole ocean blue kind of life and everything. I was actually a fan back as a youth of the Jacques Cousteau show, and he was also very much of a scuba diver and things of that nature. So I was wondering, are you going to be doing just sailing, or are you going to do any scubing or some of the other things that take place in the ocean?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do some scuba diving. I haven't done that in my whole life. I just been snorkeling, but I will absolutely not do it in the middle of the Atlantic, because I can't see the bottom, so I'm not stepping into that water. That's the Meg might come hunt me.
Dennis, I would absolutely step up and praise you, because that would be brave. Scuba diving on your own in the middle of the Atlantic. My heart would, I don't.
But I'm gonna be honest with you here, William. What is it to see in the middle of the ocean? It's like 2 kilometers deep. It's just water. I can't see that deep. There's gonna be nothing. Mm-hmm. It's just gonna be blue. And if I want to do that, I can just hold up a blue screen in front of the camera and say, could have been scuba diving, but I'm doing this instead.
Okay, well, listen, let me ask you this, because, just a couple of quick questions.
Yeah, definitely.
On your boat, I know that it's cost prohibitive for you to transmit, but are you going to be carrying, say, a GPS or a marker so that other people can actually follow you?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I want to create a website where we actually can have the tracker on so people can see where I am at all time. And obviously, as I'm going to be going over the Atlantic, I need by law to use an AIS that is an automatic transmitter that shows to other ships where I am as well, so they know where I'm at.
Right, because I was going to ask you about that. Are you going to be? I mean, because there, as you know, there are shipping lanes. Could you explain to our audience the various things that you have to do? Because isn't it kind of like, there's a water-based kind of air traffic control kind of system, because there are commercial, lanes and not in the ocean. Can you explain, what people may not know about that in terms of what you're planning?
The thing is, for me, that's going to be a lot of my crew is actually going to have to work overtime on when I know. In Europe, I'm fine. That's not a problem. I'm a European citizen, so I can go wherever I want. I just have to bring my passport. When I come to the States side, on the other hand, that's a little bit more tricky. But it also is a maritime law that says they can't deny me to go to port as long as I'm not a threat for national security.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
And
But
along those same lines, do you have any fear when you get to Miami? Because Miami is not that far from Cuba, and Cuba we don't necessarily have the greatest relationships with and everything. So, is there any concern of yours
Oh
when
yeah.
you make that trip down to Miami? Because I know that's one of your destinations, and like I said,
yeah,
Cuba is very close by.
Yeah, and
no,
that's Dennis, they're not going to know if you're a boat from Cuba or you're a boat from Europe, and so that could get a little sketchy. You're right, Mark.
yeah, most definitely. That's also why before I enter, when I enter American waters, I am obligated to contact the U.S. Coast Guard to tell them I'm entering American waters. I am cell ship this and this and this. This is my purpose. This is why I'm here. And if they don't think I'm good enough, they're gonna send a big patrol boat out. They're gonna tell me what to do. So that's a big part of it as well. I have to comply to maritime laws when I'm out there, so that's nothing strange about it.
Okay, but you're saying that, as you understand it, they can't deny you entry to a port, at least to refuel or get your necessities. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But
So,
we're not gonna be chancing here. We're gonna have all the necessary permits done before I come to America. So it's just stupid trying to do it in another way. I mean, there is a
okay,
bureaucracy. So
so then you get to Miami and you're in the United States now. Mark mentioned earlier. So after you're done, down, where do you go next after Miami?
I'm going to Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
He's trying to figure out the historical figure in Norfolk. So, Bill, if you got any ideas, because he knows he wants to celebrate, I forgot who he's celebrating in Miami, but I know in Ellis he's going to celebrate Martin Luther King. But definitely, he's looking for figures out of Virginia to celebrate inclusion, diversity, and things along those lines. So, if you got anybody in mind for Virginia, I'm sure Dennis would love to know.
Sure, sure. I mean, I will certainly send it on. I see the Instagram thing, and I'll link up with that as well. But now let me ask you about when you sail into New York Harbor. How are you thinking about that? I mean, because on the one hand, and this is what I'm curious about, part of that is replicating a journey that hundreds of thousands of people have made. And they always talk about the first time they laid eyes on the Statue of Liberty. Have you thought about that? Sailing into New York Harbor?
Yeah, I've given that a lot of thought, actually. That's why my stop before is actually at Norfolk, because it's in the proximity of New York Harbor. So I can actually get a decent rest and replenish, because that is one of the most trafficked harbors in the world. And I'm going to be on a 35 feet sailboat, so I'm not going to be noticed by anyone. So got to be on my toes there. But yeah, of course, I'm the feeling I'm gonna have when I see Statue of Liberty, obviously. But when I dock at Ellis Island, that's I'm looking forward to it already. I don't even know what kind of who knows. I might be a nerve wreck when I get there. I mean, I could become crazy out in the ocean as well. So
Sure.
Let's see. It's hard to predict, but I predict I would be kind of happy when I arrive anyway.
No, listen, Dennis, what's the name of the boat?
Right now, we haven't named her yet.
Well, do people have the opportunity to help you name the boat? Because boat names can oftentimes be fascinating. Or is this a boat name that you're going to come up with on your own? Or is it like the people that you're celebrating? Will people have an opportunity to email you, Instagram you, and give you their ideas of what they want to name the boat, and maybe that could be an idea because maybe they've got like a name, and you might be like, "Hey, that's it."
Yeah, as I said earlier in the show, I mean, every suggestion you have, I'm an open book. Send it, whatever you got. I'll look at it. If I don't like it, I'll be honest enough to say, no, that's not good for me. I mean, people can send really strange things sometimes. So, but yeah, most definitely, I'm open for everything. They know what people know what I'm trying to do and what the
Well, I know
goal
for a
is.
fact
So.
since he gave me a crack on baseball on another show we were on earlier, and actually he also has done it on other things as well. But I know for a fact that Bill really wants you to name the boat the Buffalo Bills. So just let you know, he wants you to name the boat the Buffalo Bills. So just so you know, because he is a big Bills fan, so he wants you to name the boat after his favorite football team and everything along those lines. So don't be surprised if you don't get a note asking you to name the boat that and all of that. But we are going to wrap up. One of the questions that I ask all of my guests, and I do appreciate you for being on for this 2 hours and definitely a fascinating conversation. And I think that people learned a lot about your ideas around race, inclusion, and things along those lines. And do know that I would love to have you back whenever you're available, and definitely as you get even further prepared into the trip and everything. But one of the things I try to do on all of the shows is definitely do what we've done now, which is give your social media. But if there are other social media that you would like to share, I would love you to do that now. But also, because we are an international platform, we are heard in different parts of the country and throughout the United States. I often have my guests give their message of hope, their message of positivity that they would like to share. So Dennis, is on you, and I'll also hear that from Bill as well.
Thank you. Well, my message is simple. There's not one problem in the world that can't be solved with love. Love and respect, my friends. That's about it. Look at the person next to you. If you got an opportunity, go out and hug someone you haven't hugged before. Find someone random. You better ask first because you don't want to do something stupid. But hug someone. That's always a good thing. Just make sure you're doing it correctly. We don't want anybody harassing in my name here. So do it okay and have fun.
Appreciate
That's
that and everything. I definitely appreciate that. I said that was the last question, but we didn't really touch on inclusion. So if you could really quickly, I love your idea and your definition of what inclusion is before I get to Bill, since we did talk a lot about diversity, but I never did hear your definition of inclusion.
Well, inclusion for me is quite easy. It's just respect people's choices. That's what it is. I don't care if people are gay or whatever, or if they're Muslims or whatever. For me, you're just going to be people, nothing more, nothing less. That's the simple. And inclusion for me is based on the simple fact that we only respect each other. That's the only way we're going to go forward. Respect and love, as I said. I mean, it's not that hard, actually. I mean, we can talk. We're 3 different people. How hard can it be to talk to someone else? I mean, people blow my mind sometimes in how stupidity shows itself. But it gives us a chance to at least enlighten them, and maybe we can help them. That's all. It's not that hard. Inclusion is the easy one to talk about.
Agreed. Hey, Bill, what are your final thoughts? Any words? I know you'll probably be popping on. I know the Lawyers Den is coming up, and y'all have an interesting discussion. I think y'all are going to be discussing nudity later on and everything. But definitely, I'd love to hear what is going to be happening on the Lawyers Den, and also any words that you've got that you want to share with Dennis and the rest of the audience about this idea of positivity and a message of hope, because it is something I try to do on a regular basis.
Well, actually, I can tell you. Well, I can say this to begin with. There are certain times in life when you just know that there's nothing you can say that would add more to the eloquence that Dennis already used. His word eloquent. Inclusion is simply a matter of love, and it begins with understanding and obviously a dialogue. And Dennis, I am just well. I'm ennobled only because of the courage of the human spirit for the journey that you're taking. It's not only it's not only literal across the ocean, but it's also symbolic and emotional in terms of the human journey. reaching out, discovering new people, starting a conversation, both the good and the bad, to end up in a better place. And for that, I just think it's just fundamentally inspirational. And Marc, as you know, I think of your program highly because it certainly does open up communication and dialogue for those areas and people that you wouldn't normally have an opportunity to meet. Now, for example, I did not know, Dennis, this week that I was going to be meeting a ocean-faring descendant of pirates named Dennis Erickson, who on his way to America. I think that's just fantastic, and that certainly ennobles my life. As for the Lawyer's Den, briefly, our regular show tonight live at 7:00. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and the laws surrounding free speech and nudity in all of its forms. It's just another example of a different topic that we're going to get different people together to talk about a bunch of stuff. But at the end of the day, Dennis, you are absolutely right. It is dialogue. It is love. It is not a blame game. It's a together game. And Marc, you do that so well. Dennis, I really appreciate it. I mean, I really did. You know, you don't eat seafood, but you're going to be catching fish. Love it. You know,
Yeah.
Marc?
Yep, I love it. Definitely appreciate both of y'all for being on, and I definitely look forward to hearing more about this journey, hearing more about this trip. I'm sure that I'll be running across Dennis in those clubhouse streets, as a friend of mine calls them, and everything, and do know that he is always welcome to come back here on International Broadcast Media to share the story as he prepares, and hopefully we'll be able to help find some people that are interested, whether those are investors, whether those are just people that want to follow the trip as it goes along to support him in that kind of moral support as well, because I'm sure the moral support will be needed also in addition to the financial support. So however they can give that support, I'm sure that Dennis would appreciate it, and I was so glad to have him on, and I look forward to hopefully him coming back on even before the trip. And who knows, hey, Bill, maybe we'll get him to come on from the boat. That would be amazing if he actually came on from the boat during the trip. So maybe that can happen as well. We'll have to see how this all plays out. And of course, I would not hold him on for 2 hours if it's the boat. That might be like a quick 15-minute segment.
Well,
but
actually,
I love that possibility.
It could be the christening, Marc, when he has the name and christens the boat. You know, that could be.
That could be something. Most definitely. And I want to thank both of you for having me on and treating me well. It's my first podcast ever. So, yeah, thanks. You've been great sports, and I learned a lot.
You're a natural, Dennis. You're really a natural, so don't worry about it. You know?
Yeah, you are totally a natural. I think that as you tell more of this story, even if some of the other networks come a-calling, whether they're from here or whether they're from Sweden, you are truly a natural, and I don't think that you'll have any problem tackling any of these folks whatsoever. So I look forward to hearing more about the trip. And like I said, I look forward to us being back here very shortly. So I'm here to end the broadcast. I've still got to do one more, but I'm going to catch the Lawyer's Den because I'm fascinated to see what all of those fantastic lawyers have to say about these various cases and all of that. So on that note, I'm going to hit the end broadcast, and we're going to get on out of here. But I do appreciate both of y'all for being on and look forward to more great conversations later.